Hello, Tom LaVecchia here with the latest and special edition of the New Theory Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest that came in out of town, just Ubered in from New York City, has probably one of the craziest stories that you're going to hear on this show and in many other shows that you watch. My recommendation is if you don't have a good hour, pause and catch up because you're going to want to hear this one. Hollywood Wade, welcome to the New Theory Podcast. How you doing, man?
Thank you, my friend. Glad to be here.
It's been
Thanks
a minute.
for having me.
We've been planning this for a minute.
Yeah, it's been probably a couple months in the making now. We were able to work it out this time. I don't know if you knew I was coming or what, but you just said, when's the next time you're coming in the city? And I'm like,
I think
next
I reached
weekend.
out to you, like, how you doing or what's going on?
Yeah, he was like, when's the next time you're coming up? I was like, next weekend, as a matter of fact. So here we are.
I love it. So we're going to jump right in. Here's a podcast, Crime and Entertainment. I was on Matt's show a few times with you.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't on. We never streamed from your show.
I don't think we streamed from Matt. No, we were together on Matt Cox.
Matt Cox. Shout out to Matt. He's our unifier here. So kind of like you had a crazy situation happen. So why don't you give maybe the early parts of it and give us the background?
So I kind of give a condensed version here. That way we can kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this. You know, I met my wife, fell in love. Things were going great. When we met, she had a daughter that was 3. I raised the daughter like she's my own. Then we wound up having a son, and we moved to Charleston area. We had some events happen. I was in a pretty bad car wreck that messed up my L4 and L5, and it really kind of put a damper on things like physicality-wise. It also didn't cause me to lose my job, but I lost a position at the company that I had because I was out for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So that was one thing that started affecting me.
Yeah.
And then I had a buddy that unfortunately, on the surface, he had everything he wanted.
Yeah.
You know, wife, boy, girl, Mercedes, car, Harley, golf cart, boat. I mean, he had it all.
Well.
But there was some bad stuff going on behind the scenes, and he chose to unalive himself.
Aye.
And I happened to be at like 3 houses over from where it happened. We heard some screams. We ran over there. Unfortunately, I was witness to what happened after the fact in his living room. And as I got to figuring out like what happened, what led up to it, it was just like he was going through all kind of stuff with his wife, and they were starting to fight. And in my mind, I'm like, is that where it goes? Is that like you're in it? Does it so bad that that's your answer? And, you know, I take full responsibility for it. I chose to end the marriage. I just said, look, me and the wife were fighting a lot. There was a lot of different contributing factors to that, but I chose to separate. And it was amicable. You know, it wasn't like really bad. And kind of the deal we worked out was I told her, I was like, I'll pay all the bills here and you can stay. But if you meet somebody, then we're going to have to rearrange it. She'll leave and I'll come back. Because, I mean, I didn't want to pay for another guy to be laying on my couch watching ESPN. You know? And so, and my wife's a very attractive woman, and I knew she would probably find somebody eventually. And that happened. So it was October 31st. It was Halloween night. It was her last night in the house. She moved out. I moved back in. We didn't really talk. We were going through the divorce. Had everything set up with what she was going to get.
Were you seeing anybody yourself?
401k. I was, yeah. Not like specifically one person, but you know how it is. If you read first thing in life, you just kind of play in the field. Yeah. And we had it set up. Everything was in order. We were going to the courts. And ironically enough, and I talked about this the other day on Matt's podcast, we went to court for it to be finalized. Something happened. We were 1 day early.
Wow.
And we couldn't technically do it, so they had to reschedule it.
Usually the finalization is just a stamp. Do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do this? Ready to negotiate, you sign, you get out.
Right. Well, but in South Carolina, though, you can get a 90-day divorce if you can prove one of 3 things. You got to prove either physical abuse, drug abuse, or adultery. And just given the fact that she moved in with the guy, that was adultery. But I wasn't going at her in that way to like not pay her anything or whatever. It was just a way to get it done in 90 days as opposed to a year, and which is what she wanted. So we had everything agreed on what we were going to work out. Ironically, we didn't get it done because something happened with the scheduling. We were a day early, so they rescheduled it. But before they rescheduled it, we had already started kind of reconciling a little bit. Like we probably didn't talk for 2 or 3 months, and then around Christmas time started talking.
You elaborate or reconcile?
So yeah, that's what I'm about to get into. So around Christmas time, we started talking about what we're going to do with the kids. And it was just kind of like, so how's things with you? How's things with you? And you could just tell there was a little bit there, you know, not nothing to jump back into. But I mean, we've been together a long time. We got kids together. I mean, there's a history you just can't erase. And so we just became talking more frequently around that time than we did before. Before we weren't talking at all. And she's telling me that things aren't going good with her new guy. And I'm like, well, you probably shouldn't have moved in with him that fast. I'm breaking her balls a little bit. And we fast forward a little bit, and around April, we decided that we're going to give this another shot.
Wow.
And so Easter weekend, we go to her mom's, we tell her this, tell the family, they're all excited. Now, I'll just throw this in there. The guy lived with her up until about January.
Okay.
Then he went back to where he was from, somewhere in Philadelphia. I'm not exactly sure the specifics. He only stayed gone like a couple of weeks. Then he come back to our area where we lived at, but he didn't move back in with her. He was in some like VA housing, like temporary VA housing, because he was a former veteran. So he wasn't living at the residence that she was at. So we tell everybody we're going to get back together. They're, of course, super happy. We get back, and I told the girl I was seeing. She could have cared less. It was deuces. Yeah. And, it was her job to give him the news. Well, he didn't take this very well. He, unbeknownst to me at the time, he had smashed her phone, so I couldn't get in touch with her. I didn't know really what was going on until later that night. My daughter got off work, went home, and my wife used my daughter's phone to call me and tell me that he had smashed her phone.
Wow.
Now, I found this out after the fact, too. He had made her ride around the neighborhood and look for me. I guess they rode by my house. I wasn't there.
With him or by yourself?
But he made her ride around in the car. It was just them two to try to look for me.
Oh. So
they rode by my house. I wasn't there. They rode by a couple different spots. Well, a house that it was a kind of a mutual friend of ours, the same house we were at the night the gentleman had that incident, they stopped by there. And so he sees the car pull up, and it's not uncommon for, my wife's car to pull up, and he walks up and he sees the guy in the front seat, and he's like, hey, what's going on, guys? And he's like, oh, I'm just looking for Chip, because when I find him, I'm going to kill him. Hey. And some people call me Chip from back home. And so he says that to him. So obviously that guy knows something's wrong. And so he calls me right around the time, I'd say about 11:30, 12 o'clock. And he's like, hey, if you ride by my house and you see that dude's car here, don't stop. And I'm like, all right, you got to give me a little bit more than that. Like, what's going on? Yeah. And he's like, well, something's going on. He's upset. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Well, he didn't say that he said he was looking for me to kill me. He just said that he was upset. And I said, well, I got a pretty good idea why he's upset. I said, I'm pretty sure he got some news he didn't really like. Yeah. And he's like, well, whatever. I don't know. I just don't need nothing going on at my house. So, like, if you see his car here, don't pull up and start shit. I'm like, nah, I'm cool. So didn't talk to them no more. I talked to my wife. I made sure she was good. She said at that point he was at my friend's house and everything was good. And so I was going to go on to bed. Now, the community that we live in, it's like one big community and then like 7 or 8 subdivisions in it. So I'm in one towards the front. She's like 2 behind me. So we're in the same area, but we're not like neighbors. You know what I'm saying? And I'd say about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I get a text message from the guy. And he wants to meet. But he's not aggressive with it. He's not, I'm going to come down here. And he's like, man, he said, honestly, I just want some answers. Yeah. And he said, I feel like you'll be straight with me. Yeah. And so I agreed to it. Now, we meet at my buddy's house, which is the house the guy called me from. Yeah. He's probably like 6 or 7 houses down from me. So I leave and I drive down there because it was a little chilly. And look, I'm from the South, man. I carry guns. I've always carried guns. I've had guns since I was 18, shotguns, 21 since I was handguns, all legally owned, everything above board. I was a CWP holder. Okay. And like when you leave, that's just part of what you grab. You grab your keys, your wallet, sunglasses, gun. I mean, that's just part of the deal. And so I take all that, I leave, I go down there. And basically he wanted to know, he was confronting me on, had we been talking longer than she told him we were talking. Was there an overlap? Yeah. And so I didn't know what she told him or how long. I was just like, look, man, at the end of the day, it really ain't none of your business. Yeah. Like, that's still my wife. We haven't got divorced yet. I was like, but to answer your question, no, this just started here, not too long ago. Yeah. And I think it was like, that was almost the extent of it because he realized he wasn't going to get what he wanted. And at this point, you're over there. Are you inside? Are you outside? We're in his garage. We're in my buddy's garage. Okay. Yeah. So it's all 3 of us hanging out in there. And I know that's a real weird scenario. And
the guy is there, your buddy. Yep. Okay. So you 3 are there. Okay.
Yep. And people always say, like, what are you doing hanging out with the guy? Like, I didn't go to hang out with him. He asked me to meet up. And to me, like, I feel like I could probably diffuse the situation. Yeah. I'm not going down there to make him more angry and then send him back to where my wife and kids are. That's a mistake. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm diffusing this situation. Yeah. And it worked. because once he realized he wasn't going to get a rise out of me, then it was just kind of like, all right, where do I go from here? You know, he didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
And it became really 3 dudes hanging out in the garage just under very strange circumstances.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, it's probably like 3:30, 4 o'clock. The owner of the house, my friend, is ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you going to stay here? And he asked that guy, and he's like, no, he's like, I'll just have him run me home. And so he looked at me and he's like, are you good with that? I was like, I'm good with that. Because there had been no whatever, bravado, machoism or nothing like that. There had been none of that. And so we get in the car. He was, I didn't drink anything at that garage. Now, when we get back to my home, that's a different story. But now we get into my car and I'm about to take him home. And he looks at me and he's like, you know, if we go back home, we're probably going to start fighting. Me talking about me and my wife. I was like, I'm just joking. I'm like, look, I lived with her for years, bro. I know how it is. And it's a weird situation. I've been. He's like, man, I don't really want to go home. He said, you care if we go to your house? And so I was a little hesitant, but I was like, all right, I think this will be okay. Yeah. So we drive back to my house. It's only like literally, I don't know, 100 yards. It's not very far. And he starts telling me this story about when he was in the Army and a guy got hit in the head. He was trying to hold his head together. The Army said he didn't do something right, and he got dishonorably discharged. Well, and he starts crying, like in the car. So I'm like, all right, well, the dude just got the boot. Yeah. Now he's starting to cry. He's telling me this story. It obviously bothered him, and I'm not disparaging that. What happened actually, and I found all this out after the fact, was he was intelligence. Oh. He gave that guy bad intel that led him into somewhere, which resulted in him getting, hit. Unalived. And the way he makes it seem is he was there in battle with him. So, I don't know if that's just the way he wanted to present the story or whatever. I don't know if he was trying to match the story that my friend and I had experienced with the guy, a couple houses down. I don't know why his motive for that was, but that was the actual truth of the matter, was that he was intelligence and he gave the guy bad intel. I'm sure it still bothered him. It obviously bothered him. Yeah. So at that point, I just see a vulnerable guy. And so we do wind up going in the house. We share a few drinks. We talk about his kids. We talk about my kids. And we get to a point to where we start talking about a friend of my son's mom. And he said, yeah, I heard her saying something about people with tattoos or whatever. And she was being kind of, whatever. She's like, has she ever said anything to you? And I'm like, no, man, I'm covered in them. And I kind of pulled down my shirt. You can see this open heart surgery scar right here. I was showing him this tattoo. And so he sees that scar and he takes my shirt up and he's like, damn, what happened there? And he pulls my shirt up because it goes down my chest. At that point in time, he had to have seen the gun that was on my hip. Is it in a holster or it's tucked? Yeah. It's like, it's not in a holster because I didn't have the holster on, but it's kind of like in the pants. Yeah, so there's no way he didn't see it. Yeah. I mean, there's no way he didn't see it. But he didn't acknowledge it. He didn't say anything about it.
Former intelligence, you would think.
You would think. He has at least some, weapons training. But I mean, like, again, it's not like we're, at each other or nothing like that. This is all a very cordial conversation. Yeah. And when he sees that, I kind of tell him, I had open heart surgery in 2001, senior year in high school. And he's like, under better or different circumstances, he's like, you and I are probably really good friends. And I was like, you're probably right. Yeah. And he comes at me and he does one of them like bear hug things and kind of picks me up and then puts me back down. And I thought it was a little weird, but, some people just act different ways. Yeah. Now, what I've come to realize after the fact is I think that was a test. I think that was to see, all right, can I manhandle this guy? Because immediately after he puts me down, he's like, where's your bathroom at? And I point him to the bathroom. So he goes to the bathroom, and we're in my kitchen. Kitchen's pretty small. When you come out of that hallway. Are your antennas
up at this point or not yet?
No.
Okay.
No. I just think he's got to go to the bathroom because we've shared a few drinks. He was drinking at the garage. It's not, once you break that seal, it's quite often. And so he goes to the bathroom, and the way it is, when you come out of the bathroom, you come up to the hallway, you come into the kitchen. Immediately to the right is a refrigerator, a little bit of counter space. Curves back around, you got a stove, a little bit more counter space, curves back, and the sink and everything's over here. So it's fairly confined. Now, I moved over to the stove and just kind of had my back, like just kind of chilling, waiting for him to come back in the kitchen. He comes out of that hallway, he rounds the refrigerator, and he comes straight up to me. Boom. Hand up under the neck, pushes me up. He pushed me up so hard, my feet came off the floor. I was on top of the stove, and at that point, my head's kind of pinned back against the cabinet or the microwave thing. And I mean, like, he's pushing me back, and he's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I'm just like, it's really taking me off guard. I didn't know whether he was joking. I hoped he wasn't joking, or I hoped he was joking, but I could tell real quick he was not joking. And I was able to slide and kind of get back on my feet. And I told him, I was like, bro, if you don't get off me, I'm going to shoot you. And he's holding me with his left hand. I see his right. He's coming over. He's coming across. And I kind of lift up a little bit, and he clips the bottom of my chin. He didn't get like a full shot on the face. Now, when he does this, his momentum carries him this way, so he lets go, and he kind of stumbles over. And then he's already coming back, and that was the only opportunity that I had. I took out the gun, and I fired 3 times. And at the time, I actually thought it was 2. I come to find out it was 3 later on. And so he immediately drops. I'm like, oh, shit, what just happened? So I pick up the phone, call 911. Yeah. Immediately. There's the 911 call, which is out there online. If you search for it, you can actually hear him in the background because he never talked or spoke, but he was making a lot of noise, is what people referred to as the death moan. And you can hear that in the 911 call. So you know that I called immediately. It's not like I waited. It's not like I moved anything or whatever, because that's the one thing you can't fake, brother, is forensics and science. Yeah. You know, you can move stuff around and think, when nobody's here, they won't know. They'll know. Trust me, they'll know. And so
what happens next? Yeah.
So the cops come. He tells me, you're not being arrested. You're just being detained until we can figure out what's going on. So they cuffed me and put me in the car. At this point, you know, it's now 6:30 a.m. I think just for the protocol. Yeah, protocol probably.
For your safety.
Yeah, so they say. So it's like 6:30 in the morning now. This is a Sunday morning now. It was Saturday night, turned into a Sunday morning. People are starting to get up. People are starting to go to church. And you got cop cars lining the block, then an ambulance lining the block. This neighborhood never seen that.
Did he die in the kitchen, or they brought him to the hospital?
Technically, he died at the hospital.
Okay.
He was still alive in the kitchen. He was alive, I guess, until he got to the hospital, and then he did expire at the hospital. Wow. And at some point when I'm still in this car, another cop comes up to me and says that I'm being arrested. She reads me my rights. I'm still in the car. She's like outside the car. And she reads me my rights, and she asked me if I'm going to answer any questions. And I was like, no, not without a lawyer. And she leaves it at that. So I'm sitting there waiting. Time's going by. Starting to see people that I know are like sitting around in golf carts, like just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, because it's starting to circulate around the neighborhood. And I tell the one guy, I was like, man, I got to go to the bathroom. And he's like, you got to hold it. And I'm like, there is no holding. Like, I'm going to go. It's just a matter of it's going to be in this car. You're going to let me go somewhere else. Yeah. And they let me out. They let me in my house. They asked me if there's somewhere I can change clothes. They take all the clothes that I have, take it into evidence. You bloodied? No. That was the thing, is he was wearing 3 shirts. And it's not like you see in the movies. The movies kind of paints a different picture, you know, when you shoot somebody. I think, and it does depend on the round, but like blood flies all over the wall or whatever. It wasn't like that. I never seen blood, not one drop of it. When he went down and the 911 operator told me to get a compress and put it over the wounds, when I pulled up his shirt, I literally had to look, because it was like very small.
What kind of gun was it?
It was a 9mm, but it was regular, like Full Metal Jacket rounds. They weren't like hollow points or nothing like that. So I never seen blood. Had it been, you know, something like that, it might have been, but he was also wearing like 3 shirts. So that was kind of stopping the blood. I looked at the video footage from the officer's body cam. It was probably about 15 minutes after the call before the ambulance got there, and they picked him up and put him on the gurney to take him outside. Even when they picked him up, there was only a small amount that was coming out the back of his shirt. So
they allow you, so you go back inside and they allow you to change?
Yeah, they change because they want to take all the clothes.
Now, are you being compliant where, like, did they want to test and all?
Yes. Okay. And I told them I did it. So, I mean, like, they're going to find that. And I was doing everything they asked. And I'm still thinking I'm going to jail because they are taking all my clothes for evidence. And then he's like, is there somewhere you can go while we finish doing our investigation? And I'm like, all right, I'm just being detained. Yeah. The lady said I'm being arrested. Now it says there's somewhere I can go. So I'm thinking mentally they're starting to figure out what happened. They're starting to understand it. It's a self-defense type deal. So, you know, it's looking better. You still have your gun, or they obviously took it off you? Well, they told me on the 911 operator said lay it on the counter, unloaded. And by that time, I think the police had just collected it. So I go around the corner to a friend of mine's house and wait for about an hour. a cop drives up and he said, when can you come in and answer some questions? I said, well, I got to talk to my lawyer. Now, I didn't have a criminal lawyer. When I say that, I don't mean, I have a lawyer on speed dial.
Yeah.
He was my divorce attorney. He just happened to be a former cop.
Yeah.
And so he was like, yeah, we know Donnie. He was like, we'll set up a time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I'm free to go back home? And he said, yeah. So I go back home, and I mean, obviously, the emotions are still high. There's really no mess.
Go back home. They didn't they cleaned up the crime client.
No, they don't clean it up. It's not their duty to clean it up, because I asked him that. I said, well, what about, is there any mess?
They have like usually, I actually know somebody who does this. They get called in afterwards and they're retained to clean it.
But you have to pay for it.
Oh.
The city, the cops don't pay for that. And that's what he told me, because I asked him, I said, was there any mess? And he said, I'm not sure. He's like, but if it is, that's on you to clean up. That's not our responsibility. So you have to hire a cleanup crew. Just say if there was like a big man, the blood, you have to hire that to come out there and do it. But my mom had heard about what happened from the time it happened, had gotten there, and she said there was a little bit of blood on the floor. She said, I got it up with 2 paper towels. That was it. And it was done. Other than that, other than the dents in the refrigerator and the bullet hole in the wall, you didn't know anything had happened. I mean, it was like nothing had happened.
Was the media involved yet?
They got involved within 24 hours. They were starting to pop up outside, and the media vans outside, and you were starting to get articles, and there were rushed articles that had no names. And then as more time went by, the names started getting released.
Was
my
it
name
juicier,
was thrown out.
like the initial reports? Were they a little juicier than the truth? In terms of, 'cause I remember the story, and it was like the guy caught his wife with a guy.
Yeah.
And then there was actually like somewhat of a, which was supposed to be, the stories I heard, she was there when he was unalive. And then number 2 is they called you to go there, and it was actually under the guise of being mature, but then it went south.
Yeah, no, none of that's accurate. She had not lived in that residence since November. The shooting happened in April.
All right, so you set a time with your attorney.
Yeah, so the media painted kind of more a facts picture. Social media painted those pictures that you're talking about. He came on, he called his guy with. I'm like, I couldn't respond. Obviously, my lawyer said don't respond to any of that.
Was it like TikTokers with the green screen?
Yeah, TikTok wasn't really a thing back then, but it was people especially on the Facebook community posts. I mean, those were out of hand. I mean, it was like he called his wife in bed with another man, and all this. I'm like, none of that shit. We had been separated for months, so I meet with the lawyer, and he's like, I want you to write a statement, everything that happened, bring it to me. He's like, I don't care how long it is. And so I bring it to him. We go over it. He's a former cop. He reads it. He says, sounds like a clean shoot. He's like, I'll tell them to send me their questions. And he's like, if anything's not answered in your statement that they want, I'll tell you. We'll come back in. But he's like, other than that, he's like, you're not going to meet with them. And I'm like, all right, I ain't never been through this before. So I'm thinking that's the normal way to do it.
Yeah.
He calls me an hour later, and he's like, hey, everything they wanted to know, you answered in your statement. So we should be good to go. So I'm thinking, all right, we're good. This was Monday.
Yeah.
Tuesday evening, he calls me, and he's like, hey, I got some bad news. Now, that's not anything you want your lawyer to tell you when he calls you.
Correct.
And what he says is they're charging you with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and you want you to turn yourself in tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Wait, the charge is murder?
Murder. And I'm like, murder? Like, where are they coming with that? He's like, I don't know, bro. He's like, I don't know if they're thinking that this was like a love triangle thing and you killed him to get your wife back or something like that. I said, Donnie, we were getting back together anyway. I said, I wasn't the one with the problem. He was. I said, I think they got the right idea. They got the people wrong. I was like, he's mad at me. He's trying to kill me. And he was like, look, he's like, I believe you. He's like, I'm just telling you what they're telling me. And he's like, you got to turn yourself in tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And so like, this is, later in the day, I'm scrambling. I start calling everybody I know. Who do I need to call? Who do I need to call? One name kept popping.
So I always think about this. So like you're going to turn yourself in. Like who pays a mortgage next month? What about the lawn? What about who picks up what was going through your mind, and what did you do prior to turning yourself in?
Well, we got a little bit extra time because when I started getting everybody telling me what lawyer I needed to have was a guy named Andy Savage. I called his hotline that night or that evening. And
He's one of those like billboard guys.
no, he's not a billboard guy,
okay,
but he is probably the best criminal attorney in South Carolina.
Thank goodness.
Definitely in Charleston.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of high profile cases. And I mean, I called 7 people and every one of them gave me the same name.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, this is my guy. And I get his receptionist. She said, can you be here tomorrow at 1? I said, no, ma'am. And she said, why? I said, well, I got to be turning myself in at 12. I was like, so I ain't going to be able to make that. And she's like, can you be here in the morning? I was like, I'll come there right now and sleep in the parking lot if I got to, like whatever. And so we go in, I tell him the story. He makes a phone call and he gets the surrender pushed back from Wednesday to Friday. And then he said, I'll probably get it pushed back to Sunday, but I wanted Friday just to make sure we could get our ducks in a row. So we tell him what's going on. And as we're telling him stuff, he's got people behind him. They're printing stuff off. They're getting reports. It's like, okay, he was here. He done, he was in the Army here. He was at this. I mean, they're pulling. It was something like out of a movie.
Wow.
And you can see why these guys get paid the big dollars. And he's like, look, I believe you. He's like, if you're telling me the truth, and he's like, my people will find out if you're lying in any facet. He said, if you're telling me the truth, I don't think you have anything to worry about. He said, honestly, I don't know why we're here. And so we basically prep up. From then until Sunday, we had a little get together at my house. It was very like tense and awkward. It's definitely not a party, but it was like my family drove up, everybody eat. And then Sunday, it was just like in Goodfellas. I had to go get in the car and tell my mom.
Jail.
I was like, now take me to jail. And they went and they dropped me off. I went in. Luckily, this is where I caught a break. Now, there's a magistrate can't see you for that charge. That has to be done by the circuit court. Okay. The circuit court in our area rotates county to county to county each week. Just so happened they were in Berkeley County when I went inside. So I was able to go straight in on Sunday, see the circuit court judge on Monday, and luckily I got bond on Tuesday. We seen her.
How much was your bond?
Went. It was $150,000, which was the lowest they could give.
Total.
And I've seen people always say, there's no way I got this for weed and I got this for that. I'm not saying, maybe they didn't. Maybe they got more charges in the past. I never had any priors. I'd never been arrested. I think we presented a very good case.
And you've been compliant the whole time.
Yeah, I think we presented a very good case.
Like
that this was self-defense.
Your passport and all that? Or,
I actually didn't have a passport.
Okay, so where you go.
Yeah, but I mean, like I had stable job, been working at the same company for 15 years, known in the neighborhood. I'm not running. I got a pretty decent damn lawyer. Yeah. You're not just going to take off running. I think all that was a contributing factor. Had I went in there with a public defender, it'd have probably been more. But I think that's what led to it. And the judge didn't actually give the grant bond in the room. The state giving all the reasons why I should be in jail. My lawyer's giving all the reasons why I should be let out. And she's kind of looking and she goes, all right, I'll make my decision and let you know. Bangs the gavel. And I turn around and I look at my lawyer and I'm handcuffed, wrists or ankles and all. I was like, what the hell does that mean? He's like, I guess that means she'll let us know. And within a couple of hours.
What were they trying to do? They were trying to do no bond?
Well, they wanted, the state wanted no bond. They didn't want me out.
You to sit there?
Yeah. The state wanted no bond and they didn't want me out. And I never heard a judge say, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
In TV show, I mean, I know it's not TV, but like TV, movies, or you always say either bond granted or bond denied.
Correct.
Well, within an hour, I got back to the holding cell. I called my wife, and she was like, hey, they're going to give you bond, but you might not get out till tomorrow. And I'm like, well, that's fine. If I got to do another day, I'll do another day. And so I get out the next day. Thank goodness, because there's a whole nother podcast we could do on just the small amount of time I was in there. Yeah. I did get transferred to a holding unit, which was, full of stories in and of itself, but it's definitely not a place you want to be. I can put it like that. It's not a place you want to be. And so I get out, and now the main focus is trying to fight this case because it's obvious they're going to hit me with, they're wanting to give me 25 to life.
Sink.
Yeah.
Jeez.
25 to life, no second degree, no involuntary manslaughter, no none of that. Now, that's not to say they couldn't change it to that later.
So what were they, like murder 2 kind of type thing?
They didn't have the 2s and the 1s and all that there. It was just murder or either involuntary manslaughter or something like that. They didn't have the 2s for whatever reason. Which in that and of itself was premeditation.
I was going to say.
So like.
They might have overcharged you.
This guy, and I think a lot of times they do that because I think we discussed this earlier. They can drop them down, but they can't go up.
Yeah.
So you start out high, just like selling a car.
Yeah.
You start out high knowing you're probably going to work down a notch or two.
Correct.
And to the guy, they think they're getting a deal when that's probably what you were going to get anyway. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of, it's obviously different circumstances, but that's kind of the setup for it. Now, to top that off, I get out, we're working on that. The job that I had for 15 years, they fired me because of the situation.
So how does I always wonder how that works. So they see it in the news, you're not found guilty, but because it's, you know, private company, they're like, what did they say? Loss of trust? Like what was their reasoning?
Their reasoning was it was conduct detrimental to Nucor's off work code of conduct.
Oh, you probably have like a morality clause in the fine print.
And I even talked to the general manager, and I'm like, bro, I could see if I was at a bar or if I was somewhere else, or somewhere I had no business being. Yeah. I said, I'm in my own house.
So much for support and rallying around you, huh?
Yeah, none whatsoever. They cut me off. So like now I get food stamps, Medicaid, I get everything because like I don't know how long this is going to last. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get another job. Yeah. Luckily I do, but I don't know how long because now this is on my record.
Might not be able to work.
It's a pending house arrest, pending murder charge. So I did get house arrest. The deal of that was I could only leave my house for church, doctor's visits, lawyer's visits, and I think that was it at the time originally. It got loosened up a little bit later, and I could go to my kids' sporting events and stuff like that. But that in and of itself was rough. I mean, I'm a very outgoing dude. I love to talk to people. I love to go. I'm not one to sit still.
So you know, usually you have the pre-trial conferences, the lawyers with the judge. I don't know if you're there, may or may not be there.
Yep.
What was kind of the initial discussions?
The initial discussion, we had the preliminary hearing, I think they called it. And basically that's just, you're not really submitting evidence. The state is saying why they're charging you. The lawyer's saying why that charge makes no sense or whatever else. So it's not a lot. It's not a official like court hearing, but it's submitting the evidence that they have. They submitted it. Our lawyer combated it, went after it. And the judge even then said there's not a lot here, but given the circumstances, I'll bind it to trial. So it was going to trial. But
circumstances being what?
I guess everything that she had said, you know, for what their evidence was and then what our evidence was. Like one of their big things was, you know, he was wearing a white long sleeve T-shirt, but there was no blood on him. So we don't think he was in as close proximity as he says he was. But the thing is, the guy was wearing 3 layers of clothes. He had on 3 shirts. Yeah. He had on a T-shirt, long sleeve shirt, and like a hoodie. So that thing's you're not going to get blood back out from that on you.
Correct.
It's going to go backwards, if anything.
Where did your, at the time, your wife at the time, where did she land? Supportive, not supportive? Where did she land?
She was supportive of me 100%. Okay. And then she immediately moved back in from that. We were planning on this anyway, but she moved from her residence back into my house.
Well, that must have been good.
And yeah, that was helpful. And dude, I mean, she was a G when it come to that money because the lawyer wanted $50,000 to take this case.
The other part is you have a job, you're a regular guy, there's a high profile guy. How does that work? You get to walk in with 50. Like, how much does he need to start?
He didn't give me a number to like start it. He just said it's $50,000 to take the case, and I need another 15 to start retainers, doing interviews, things like that. Yeah. So my wife put down $30,000.
Wow.
And my mom put down $20,000 on credit cards. Now, when I got fired, I had a pretty substantial 401k. The company, even though I'm not fond of them, they were generous with their 401ks. And after working with them for about 15 years, I had close to about $180,000 in there.
So you had to tap into your 401k to basically save your life.
Yes, because you can't get to it while you're working. Correct. But once they fire you, then you can get it out. And so penalty, it was kind of a lifeline. So I had to pay the penalty, and then I paid everybody back, got us whole, paid off everything because I didn't know how long this stuff was going to last. Yeah. And so now what the lawyer's saying.
I got to forgive me on the logistics.
Yeah.
So he's like 160 or 70. Was that like, hey, that should be a while, or was that just an appetizer just going to cost you like $250,000?
Well, what he said was, we're going to do what's called a Duncan hearing or an immunity hearing based on self-defense and castle law.
Okay.
That's what we're dumping all our eggs into.
Yeah.
If we can win that, it's done. We don't have to go to trial.
Castle domain. And,
yes.
Yeah.
And so that would supersede the trial.
Got it.
So, but then the burden of proof is flipped. See, typically the burden of proof is on the state
Correct.
to prove that you did whatever you did. When you do an immunity hearing on self-defense and
the
castle
opposite.
law, it's the opposite. You have to present
But you had
all
text
the proof.
messages, you had some other stuff.
We had
right?
text messages, forensic. We actually flew a forensics guy down from New York, and we set up like the lasers for that would trace the bullet path. And it was in the kitchen. So we put the wall to the refrigerator back to the corner where I was standing. One of our investigators was about the same height as this guy. They had a T-shirt with a mark on the back where one of the exit wounds was. And so they're trying to place him in line with that exit wound and couldn't get it.
Do you remember when you shot, were you on the stove or were you feet on the floor?
No, I was on the floor.
Oh, okay.
I'd gotten off. When he hit me on the chin, I took a couple steps back in the corner, and that's when I went
Got
out
it.
and shot. One of the casings actually ejected out and landed in the sink.
In the sink, okay.
And beside me. So when they do that bullet path, they're trying to line this guy up to where the exit wound lines up, and they couldn't get it. And I'm like, well, y'all got to understand, he wasn't like standing straight up. I said once he kind of went over to the side after he swung, he was hunched over, coming back almost like in a tackling motion. And so when that guy done that and he bent over, that dot went right on that shirt. And so my lawyer at that point in time, he was like, he said, that's all I need. He said, you're literally in a corner. He's coming at you. You fire.
Because you could
that's
retrace
the yeah, and it was just like something out of like CSI or something like that. And so in his mind, we're good.
Yeah.
He's like, that's what I need. That's what I'm gonna put in front of a jury. There's no way that they can't see this as self-defense. Now, what happens after that is obviously the court process isn't swift to begin with. Then COVID happens. So that puts a damper on things. You know, they're wanting to do stuff through Zoom and Skype and all that. And my lawyer said, I don't work on Zoom or Skype. I work in a courtroom. I was able to find employment, so I did have some money coming in. It wasn't the best job, but they didn't check my background, so I was able to at least have some income coming in. And he's like, look, if you're okay and you can survive, he said.
Amazon?
No, it was actually a fabrication, a sign company. And he said, if you can survive, he's like, it's better to let the time go. Because he's like, people move, people leave, people die, evidence gets lost. Not that I had any evidence against me.
So
he's like
maybe
move.
What is that? Not papering, but like the longer you wait, especially during the pandemic, the docket's full. Respectfully, some of the maybe older people, time is on your side.
Yes.
But also economically, it's not, because the longer it takes, the more money, and mentally.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Time is on your side, but that's the only thing.
Yeah.
The pressure of everything is not on your side. The pressure every day is mounting because you don't know if you're going to get a phone call saying, hey, something's happening, whatever. It's an enormous
Media
amount
is
of
following
pressure.
this closely, or not so much?
By that time, after the preliminary hearing, not so much. They'd done a lot of stuff the week of, and then they never touched it again.
Next news cycle.
Yeah, and that was kind of his thought process behind it. Was he's like, the longer it goes by, people forget about it. Some people even thought I've been in jail the whole time.
Well, I know you well enough. We've worked together on some stuff, and I know you well enough. You are kind of an even-keeled, kind of laid-back guy.
Very.
But like in that circumstance, was there like a constant, knot in your stomach? Like I mean, how can you be kind of laid back and even-keeled, knowing the prospect of life in jail is over your head?
It was hard, and I still have it to this day. I think it's probably some form of PTSD, but I had to stay busy. I had to stay busy 24/7, doing something, whatever I could do to keep my mind, because if I just stopped and sat, it would start to marinate. And that's kind of where the podcast come in at my own, Crime and Entertainment. Because it was during the pandemic, a lot of people were starting.
While you were on trial?
I started the podcast while I was on house arrest. I come up here and meet with like Anthony Ruggiano.
Yeah.
I met with him twice before he ever knew. And like when he finally found out, he was like, I had no idea. He's like, you didn't tell me all this. I said I couldn't. It was still pending.
Wow.
But I had to get permission every time I left the state. But they allowed me to do it. And that's what I'm saying. This thing drug on for so long.
Yeah, but strategy-wise, should you be interviewing ex-mobsters while you're on trial?
Well, see, I thought about that too. I thought about that too. But I'm like, look, it don't matter what I do. Somebody's going to have a problem with it. If I interview priests, somebody's going to say, oh, you kill a guy, now you're interviewing priests. I said, I could interview kindergarten kids. is, well, what's he going to do?
Did
What's
Savage
he going to
give you
teach
any
these people?
guidelines you run it by him?
I told him I was going to start it, and he's like, go for it. I mean, he said, obviously, don't talk about your stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm not promoting this.
You got balls, huh?
You know, I mean, but the way I do it, Tom, and I think you've probably seen this, is I'm not out here saying, oh, everybody wants to be a gangster, whatever.
Yeah.
Look, these guys led a life, and it landed them in jail.
Yeah.
And that's not the only people that I covered either, but I'd say 99%
Your
of
bigger
them.
interviews are with the ex-guys.
Yeah, 99% of them, except for maybe Gene, say, look, that's not the life you want to go to.
Yeah.
You know, and I think Gene is even at that point now, but he definitely glorified, you know, the life that he lived. But it was all the point of, look, this is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
This is not the road you want to go down. This is what it leads to. Anthony Aralotta, Anthony Ruggiano, all those guys, they say that, we done all this, but this is what it cost us.
Yeah.
So there's a price to pay. And then I interviewed guys that have been wrongfully convicted, like Jeffrey Deskovic, who's from Peak Skills, I think, somewhere up here, done 17 years wrongfully convicted.
Wow.
Got out. Andre Brown, done 22 years wrongfully
Was there
convicted.
any part of it, of a media strategy on your side in retrospect, where if you got a little fame or you interviewed a guy like that where people could relate or people might check you out and become more likable, in retrospect, was that media strategy part of your maybe conscious or subconscious defense?
100%. And you're the only person that's ever asked that. And because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, look, if I put myself out there as interviewing these people and I highlight these stories of wrongful conviction and all that, and people see, you know, the guy that actually really cares about all this stuff, I then become more likable, because that's the problem. Not that I'm not likable already, but like when people just see a mugshot of you being arrested for murder, they immediately say, oh, well, that guy, he must be a bad guy. He got arrested.
Well, the reason why I bring this up is, the reason why I bring this up is I do PR as part of my agency,
right?
And I got approached, and we've done cleanup. Like guys like you may come to us, and be like, "Listen, I'm going back to my life.
Right.
I kind of need you to help. You know, we can't scrub it, but we can do certain things.
Yeah,
right?
put it on the 95th page.
Correct. Like they say, you want to hide the dead body, put it on the second page of Google. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of along those lines. But then I got approached one, and then I'll get people that are on trial. Like you might get like, you know, hey, I'm got canceled and I'm on civil litigation, just help mitigate things. So I've done that and worked on that. But I got approached to kind of do anti-PR, meaning like to talk bad about you, like put a negative narrative about you, right? And I declined, and now with this whole Blake Lively, and I don't know if you've been following that.
With that movie they were in.
So I guess it's a bigger business and more than I thought. But I was thinking you the opposite, where you had a media strategy in mind that was brilliant, because, you know, I don't know about you, but if I'm on this case and I'm a juror and I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to consume every episode. And you're a likable guy. Yeah, whether we like it or not, you're a likable guy. So that's pretty brilliant. What happened next?
So we start doing the podcast. Work-wise, I'm still chugging along at work. They're still trying to figure out dates till we can go in and do this hearing. The podcast has got me flying to New York. They're letting me do this. They're letting me go stay weekends.
You have an ankle monitor?
No, I never had an ankle monitor.
Okay.
I don't know if that was because of Andy or my lawyer what.
Wait. So I want to make sure I appreciate this. They're like, okay, hey, you can, you know, and I'm assuming you're also like, hey, this is part of my employment, or
that was my pitch. I'm not getting paid a lot, but this is a job.
Yeah,
it's a job. Yeah.
So that part I get. So this is my meaningful income. It's something I could do from home because it's conducive to that. But I'm going to meet the son of the would have been the head of the Gambino family.
Okay, now that I didn't tell them. that I did not tell them.
Okay.
I did not tell them who I was interviewing.
The nature of the show, the guests, that kind of stuff.
I think they might have knew the nature of the show. Yeah, I told Savage. They might have knew the nature of the show, but I did not tell them who I was interviewing.
Got it.
And
well, you're also not convicted yet, so you're not on paper where like,
right. It's not like I can't hang out with them.
Yeah.
And so, and it was funny that Andy never knew. Andy never, or not Andy, but Anthony. They never knew until it finally, came to a resolution. And so I had come up here and met with them twice. Yeah. We had done a lot of stuff in studio, and then there was talks of coming to a third time. Yeah. And I called Andy, and I'm like, "Look, man, they're talking about doing it again. This could be a reoccurring thing. Like, what have we got to do to get this in front of somebody? Because it's getting like we're closing in on 5 years.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I've been thinking about this. He said, I've got a plan. And he's like, if you're comfortable with it, we can do it. He said, I think what we have is so powerful in your defense. We're going to say, look, we're going to give you everything we've got. We're going to give everything to the solicitor, show it to him. And he's like, we think it'll be so powerful that they'll drop it or just dismiss it. Yeah. He's like, but the downside of that is if they don't think it is powerful, then we've shown our hand of how we're going to defend this. And so I had to think about that for a little while. Ooh. And so I mulled it over. In? Yeah. Do you risk it? Do you go all in? And I'm like, ultimately, I was like, Andy wouldn't have brought that to me if he didn't think he could pull it off. Ooh. And me knowing the facts about the case that I know, I felt comfortable in it too because I was in a position, Tom, where I didn't need to lie.
Yeah.
I didn't need to fabricate anything. I told the truth. You know, everything up until that point had resulted in me telling the truth.
Which office was prosecuting? I'm assuming
the county solicitor's or county sheriff's office, which is we call them solicitors in South Carolina, but it would be like DAs up here.
Yeah.
District
the
attorneys.
state didn't want to pick it up?
Well, it's technically is the state. Yeah, it's essentially the state.
But they picked it up. Was there any political stuff like the person that started it wanted to keep it or they did it because they're running for office? Was there any political ramifications? Or
originally, the first solicitor that had it, he was a younger guy, and I think, which really pisses me off, I think he wanted the battle of going up against Andy. He was a young hotshot solicitor, and I think he wanted the battle. He didn't. I don't even know if I cared about that. I think it was more.
He wants to beat him to say he beat him.
Yes,
even if like you did it or not.
Yeah, that's the vibe that I got. I can't say that's 100% true, but when we went for a house like a bond reduction to try to let me do some stuff on house arrest. Like they're talking. I'm like sitting there.
What more you can do? You're through your mom's house.
I hadn't done it at that point. I hadn't started yet. Okay. I'm sitting here. My lawyer's on my right. He's in front of me, and they're trying to like subpoena records from that guy's army. And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to let you do it." And he's like, "Well, you know, I can do it anyway. I just got to go through trial." And he's like, "Well, then you got to go through trial," which just means I'm going to have to pay more money. And they're bickering back and forth, and I can just tell that this young hotshot wants to go one-on-one with Savage. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm in the middle. I'm a pawn in this. Yikes. What eventually happened was that guy left office and went somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So they had a new one.
So hence the waiting game. So Savage's strategy was
more part of the waiting game because every time that happened, it reset the deck.
You might get that case or inherit that case, and you're new. You need a win, and if you're like not, and this is this is terrible, but it's not about whether you're guilty or not. Can they prove it?
Yeah.
Or can your guy do a better job at them not proving it? And then I might be like, you know what? Do I want to start off with an L?
Yeah. And that's something that played into because originally a lady took that spot. Then she was only in there for a few months and she moved. The new solicitor come in and that's who Andy contacted about this deal.
Yeah.
And so we go to the police station.
Yeah.
Our forensics guy from New York basically presented a video of everything that they said was the reason why they charged me.
Engaging them, saying, "Hey guys, you know what? I know we're in middle of battle.
Yeah,
but like we really didn't do this. Can we talk and let's present some stuff and like really, God forbid, try to work this out."
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. The presentation that the forensics guy put in there, like they were trying to say, well, he said there was a struggle, but we see no signs of a struggle. So he takes his body cam, the officer's body cam footage that first arrived, and he zooms in on different parts of the kitchen. There's like a knocked over shot glass on the floor, which apparently we knocked over in the struggle, and it's rolled there. Knocked over glass on this corner. He's zooming in on all these with arrows saying, look, knocked over glasses, all signs of a struggle. Then he was like, they said he didn't have any blood on him, that was suspicious. This guy was wearing 3 shirts, and they had them all laid out. He was like, with this caliber,
was
at this closer range.
To your benefit or not good for you?
What do you mean?
So when he did see signs of a struggle.
Oh, it was to my benefit because they were trying to. Basically the narrative they were trying to paint that I just popped them. Hey, it was like boom, 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 just out of nowhere.
You never had a fight in your life.
Yeah, we never.
Never arrested, never.
Yeah,
you have no priors, right?
No, never. The worst thing I had on my record at that time was a speeding ticket.
Jeez, and he had a legal
gun,
not for nothing in the South in your home.
In the South, in my home, like that gun, I had been pulled over with that gun before on a traffic stop.
In New Jersey, you're cooked.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
I've been pulled over in my
Julian,
hometown with that gun on by a traffic stop, and the numbers run, and the guns come back clean.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, that even matched because I told him, look, I got pulled over on this date. Find that, and you'll see that was the gun that I was carrying then. So it's not like it's a different gun. And I'd had that gun for years.
Far from a legal expert, but at this point, I'm surprised it went this far.
I was too, but I think it was also a matter of they knew that they had screwed up. So if you drop it immediately, then you're kind of opening up the door for a lawsuit. So it's kind of like, let it go, let it go, let it go, and then maybe offer something at the end.
What happened next? So they present the new guys come in, the forensic,
present everything. Evidence was pretty good on our side, like everything as far as blood spatter or lack thereof, that there was a struggle. And then they come to my house. The solicitor, his number 2, and the investigator that was on, like the police investigator on that case, that done like the crime scene investigator.
Did they say, hey, Savage, meet us there, or they just went unsolicited?
So we met at the police station. We showed them all our stuff. I had to leave because they were going to show my team the stuff they had on me, but I wasn't allowed to be there.
Naturally.
The next spot was back at my house. So I went straight back to my house. I'm waiting on all of them to get there. They get there. And I basically walk them in the kitchen. Now, and I played this right. I never got rid of that refrigerator. It didn't have a hole in it. It had a dent. Yeah. It bounced off the handle, hit the front of it, and shot and hit the wall. Wow. So I had it covered up with pictures so I didn't have to see it all the time, but I never moved it. So when that solicitor comes in there, I walked him through the whole scenario. I'm like, look, he comes out of this hallway. We lock up right here. He swings. I'm in this part of the kitchen. I pull out the gun. Boom. One hits here. One goes into the water, the other one stayed in him. And that was another key thing too, is they were trying to say that we were further apart than they were. Well, you got a double-sided refrigerator and the water's on the left-hand side. If he'd have been any further back, those bullets wouldn't have had a chance to V out.
Because it would have been deeper, yeah.
Correct. So they would have been like boom, boom, almost beside each other.
But the fact that you were closer, it gave it more. There was 2 exit wounds?
There was 2 exit wounds, yes.
As well as a third bullet, which
did not exit.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of like, they kind of screwed herself when I was like, well, he was real farther away. Well, if he was further away, these bullets wouldn't have had a chance to separate like that. He was so close that once they exited, they had a chance to separate. Wow. And so one of the rocks glasses, like, you know, that you drink, liquor out of.
I know.
I give it to the solicitor. I'm like, look, I said, put that in your hand. I said, feel that. I said, that's not a solo cup. Yeah. You're not going to knock that over with just, a brush up against it. You could tell he really took it in. Yeah. He wasn't lip servicing me. And so we talk, and he asked me, I think, 1 or 2 questions. I don't remember specifically what it was, but it wasn't nothing like of any kind of big magnitude. And he was like, all right. He's like, we'll be in touch. This was August. August goes by. September goes by. Year? This was now 2023. Oof. Happened in 2018 to 2023. August goes by, September, October, and October 31st, I was actually supposed to come back to New York. Rugiana was having a birthday party in Brooklyn. Dowd was there. A bunch of people were there. I was supposed to be at it, and I wound up catching the flu. And so I was like, I don't want to bring it up there to everybody. So I felt horrible. And he calls me one day. It's not uncommon for Andy to call me, but he doesn't call me a lot. Yeah. And when he called me, he was like, how you doing? I said, well, I'm battling the flu, man. He said, well, I got something that's going to make you feel better. He said, case is dismissed. Wow. And I was like, oh, dude, I dropped like to my knees. I was crying like I was just so overcome with emotion. It was just such a relief. And I mean, like, it was just like everything had lifted off me, because I felt like I was walking around in that cartoon with a piano over their head hanging by a string. And at any point, that string's going to break and it's just going to fall. And like that was just, it was like the biggest relief. Yeah, it was just the biggest relief when he told me that. And I called my wife, I told her, I called my mom, I called my dad. And I mean, it was just really such a relief. It was done. We wound up getting the record scrubbed, or what you call it?
Expunged.
Expunged, yes. Wound up getting the record expunged. And that was it. And at that point in time, because everything had been done, I started telling my story on some podcasts. So I went on like Matt's and Danny's from Concrete,
Did you do Julian's?
I've never done Julian yet. No, no. Hopefully one day. I know him. He and Matt doesn't like to have a lot of crossover.
Oh yeah.
So
I
found Matt before I found Julian.
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah.
But hopefully one day I'll get on there. I'm sure someday we'll sit
Danny's
down.
the biggest of all.
Yeah, Danny, and I done Matt and Danny the same weekend. I done Matt first.
Oh, that's right, because they're not far from me.
Yeah, they're not far. And he was like, "When do you leave?" And I said 2 days. And he's like, "I might have another guy for you." So he picked up the phone.
Have you been in talks with like any media outlets? Somebody want to pick it up for a story or?
A few people have contacted me, but I don't know how serious they are. I did have one media outlet around there that contacted me immediately after it was open. It was the paper. Yeah. I've had that too. Yeah. I've been approached by that, and that could possibly be in the works because there's a lot more to this story.
I know there was. I know there's other.
Yeah.
How about if trust me? I mean, you're coming back, and you'll be whenever you come up here, we'll have you on. But there's another podcast where somebody really wants a deep dive. Would it be Matt Cox or which one?
Yeah, I would say Matt. Matt, really all them. Ian Bick was a good one. Obviously, the best one that I think I ever did. It was almost 3 hours long. Was Sean Atwood.
It's a biggie.
Yeah, and crazy enough, that probably had the least amount of views out of all of them. It was probably like 15. It was like 15,000 views. I don't know why, but
how many times did he bring up Sammy?
He didn't talk about Sammy none. This was before all that movie. This was probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Oh, wow. And I've been on Sean's shows since then for some different things unrelated to my story.
Have you been considered, or you don't? I mean, if it's past, give the name, but anywhere like you had some biggies lined up and then it pan out, or are you still like in Lex or some of these bigger ones, or?
I would love the opportunity. It's just getting that contact info, getting it out there. Like, obviously, I work on my own podcast too, and that's a grind.
Did you saw Wet Underbelly?
No, I was supposed to try to get up with him when I went out there to see Francis, and then I interviewed with Cinemills TV. Also,
I saw some of that.
Yep. So hopefully, I can get Underbelly next time I'm out there.
I like it.
I think that would be great. I think my story would do good on his show.
I love it. Well, listen, let's get you. You have some time for lunch?
Yes.
Let's get him some nice Jersey food and
appreciate you, my friend.
Not disappoint. See you next time. Just follow Crime and Entertainment, Hollywood Wade. How can people find you?
We're everywhere, man. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and especially on the YouTubes. We drop one video a week. A little over 13,000 subscribers we just clipped. Nice. So it's been a grind, but it's starting to climb.
I think I caught you around 5,000-ish, and then we started working together. And
it's probably doubled within the last year.
Like, you know what's crazy though, just real quick, is Matt's about $500,000 now at this point.
Yeah, like 537 or something.
So it used to be kind of like if you went on a show that, let's say, had 500,000 viewers, there was not a formula, but you'd pick up 10, 15,000, 20,000.
Yeah.
You could go on like Francis or this or that and get like 2,000. It's weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't cross over as much as it used to.
Well, and you know, when I done his show, Matt only had like 70,000. And I probably did get about I'd say 1,000 or 2,000 hits off of that. And then
what about the second one?
The second one didn't do as well. And I think a lot of people, which I guess is a credit to him, they've been longtime listeners. Yeah. A lot of people remembered it. So I don't know if they watched it.
So I remember, like, I think we did two or three lives together.
Right.
And of course, of the three, you, me, and Matt, I'm the one who always gets roasted. But I'm also like a shit show. Like my kids are in the picture. I'm having a cigar outside, and I don't know, but it is what it is. But I'm like with lives, I can care. You know what I mean? Listen to you guys. I know you guys have some fun. But he's got a pretty staunch following. So so check out Crimes and Entertainment, Hollywood Wade, and see you next time for New Theory Podcast.